So we're going to be talking today about doing some creative things with Gen AI, generative AI. Just to note, this presentation was created or edited using Gen AI tools. It's very important when you use Gen AI to note the fact that you're using it. Otherwise, people can start accusing you of doing things like creating deep fakes and misrepresenting things. Or as I was recently thrown off Twitter for being inauthentic. So Gen AI has been in the news a lot lately, and largely for the wrong reasons, because people have misused it. For example, to misrepresent things or create fake news situations, things like that. We don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. But we also note the fact that every technology that's come along has been pointed at as the end of the world as we know it, if it gets going. Starting with the printing press, continuing to the television. And this was the original thought when television was created, that we could not see any use for it, any possible use for television except for in education. And of course, that turned out to be not particularly true. And of course, now AI has bounced up into the halls of Congress where people are looking at finding regulations to regulate it.
Please tell me somebody didn't actually say that.
No, I made that up.
Okay.
So actually, that's misrepresentation. That's a deep fake. About me, I was born and grew up in New York City. This is I've actually lost track. This is either the 10th, 11th, 12th, something TCF talk. I've been doing it for on and off for about 20 years. I'm a member of the steering committee and the webmaster. So if you have any problems with our website, I'm the guy to complain to. Thank you. I'm.
It has all the information you need.
That's good to hear, and no extraneous information, hopefully, that makes it hard to find things. It's a good user interface. My background is in electrical engineering in terms of education. Never was a practicing electrical engineer. Got more into the software side of things as soon as I started playing with computers, and worked for the RCA Solid State Technology Center, which used to be in Somerville. Now it's a Costco, I think. Digital Equipment Corporation, and HP. There was somebody talking in the hallway before about the evolution of the 1802 microprocessor, and then the next big thing was the PDP-11. So I had a chance to work with the companies that were building a lot of the pioneering computer hardware and microprocessor equipment out there. About 20 years ago, I started the Round Mountain Group, which over the years has become an award-winning web consulting company. We also do hosting and do a lot of web design, and we do a lot of the graphic design for our customers as well. But before that, when I was working in the industry, per se, I was pretty heavily involved in the development of mobile tools, like the mobile web, and been involved in a lot of big projects like the NASDAQ Trading Network, Time Warner Video on Demand. I was the mayor for a number of years of Bethlehem Township, New Jersey, not Pennsylvania. Very, very rural place in Hunterdon County. Very much involved in farmland preservation. And I'm still involved in terms of digital government in the township and in the county. Specifically there, what we've been doing is rolling out the OWL device. If you're familiar with the OWL device, essentially allows a whole group of people in a big room to participate in a Zoom meeting. And it uses AI to target itself on the person who's talking, and then zero out the microphone of the people that who are not talking. So when you go back and play these videos back that we create, it almost looks like there's a cameraman in the room who's taking the pictures. Really works nicely. In terms of hobbies, I'm a photographer, amateur historian, model railroader, and AI experimenter. I like to play with things that are new. In terms of my journey in AI, it really started obviously with web design. We just started finding that generative AI was an easier way to get to illustrate websites we were building for people than using stock imagery. It's also a lot less expensive. We've been using Photoshop and Lightroom AI tools to edit photos, reduce noise, change colors, make pictures more beautiful and vibrant. I'm not sure if that's cheating or not. My wife says it's cheating, but I'll let you be the judge when you look at some of the photography that we've done and how we've used AI to improve it. And most recently, video. I have always wanted to shoot video, edit it, and build, small films, music videos, things like that. And now I'm able to do it without having a whole crew to actually record what my vision is that's out there. This is a photo I love to use when I talk about AI and stock imagery and illustrating websites. One of my customers really was a company that cleaned up toxic waste dumps. And we had a great discussion with their CEO one day. Actually, it was an argument. He was actually insisting that we use pictures of the toxic waste dumps they've cleaned up in their website. And I said, no, 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 no. It's much better to have an artistic picture of a toxic waste dump that sends the message, gets more people interested to come back and look at your website than it is to have your specific toxic waste dump. So this is an example of a beautiful photograph of a toxic waste dump that can be created in generative AI, specifically in Dall-E from OpenAI. Last year, if you recall, the 2024 TCF website, we illustrated completely with AI-generated imagery. Mostly these families of robots shopping in a bazaar, at a party. I think this year we have one that's in motion with robots dancing. So we love the robots, and they do a good job signifying, machine intelligence. So we'll talk briefly about the ethics of generative AI. I'm not going to get into a debate with anyone about the ethics. There are some aspects of generative AI that I think are kind of not good. The fact that it's essentially going off and scarfing material that has been done by other people and then rehashing it into something that you're asking for. That's probably not that great. But from the perspective of a creator and the perspective of someone who's building things, building parts and pieces of websites for people, it's too good a technology to pass up and not use. And that's why everyone is using it. If you use it commercially, you need to ensure that you have the rights to use it. If you're posting things that you've created, it's a very good thing. And I think it's almost incumbent on you to, for example, on an Instagram post or a Twitter post or something, to use created by your name or something, company, using the tool so that people know what it is. In YouTube, if you post a YouTube video, you have to, in fact, declare synthetic content now. And that's a good thing, so that when people scroll down and look at the description of the video, they can see that this was not something that was naturally created. The one that scares me, though, is the baby peacock story. What do you think a baby peacock looks like? The ugly thing on the left or the cute little thingy on the right? If you go to Google and search for baby peacock, the first return you'll get, as of a couple of weeks ago, when a guy by the name of Tony Northrup found this, the #1 return was the cute little thing on the right, which looks so cuddly and you'd like to have one and give it to your kids. But of course it's not. The real baby peacock is this ugly thing. And I'll tell you, not to veer off topic, we live next to a farm, and that farmer kept peacocks. And peacocks are the god-awful worst bunch of birds to have near your property. They escape constantly from the farm. They come over to our deck, use it as their giant bathroom. And the male goes up every night on our chimney, and he has a howl, I guess a mating call or something, that sounds like a garbage scow foghorn, except it's about 10 times louder. They are the worst birds. And the babies do not look like this, but it's kind of cute though. I'd like to have one of those too. Now, throughout here, I will illustrate the presentation with some cat AI generated photos. My word to you about this is, if your cat is a conspiracy theorist, don't let them anywhere near generative AI, like this guy. All of these AI programs, generative AI programs, whether you're talking about video or still images or text, have content restrictions. You should read them carefully and follow them. Most services restrict the creation of not safe for work images, obviously, things with weapons being used, or you usually can't pick and choose current political or entertainment figures, although there's a lot of inconsistency out there. And one thing I will tell you about, don't say I ever told you this, but if it says, no, I can't do this, just say, try again. In 90% of all cases, it'll do it. At least ChatGPT will, and Dall-E will. We'll talk a little bit about some of the providers in a second. All of these services are capable of producing offensive and downright stupid images, by the way. The best one I heard about was somebody in Germany using the German language to make a request, asked for a picture of SpongeBob, and Dall-E responded with a SpongeBob in an SS uniform, which was kind of horrible. It doesn't happen anymore. In fact, you can't even ask for SpongeBob because SpongeBob is now a protected, copyrighted figure, at least in OpenAI's products. So, be aware that there's some weird stuff going on sometimes, and you have to look at these carefully before you publish them or send them out to people. Some AI content will trigger warnings or suspensions on social media. This happened to me, actually. I was actually thrown off Twitter about 2 weeks ago for something. And I'll tell you, I was really pissed about this, but then I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to let it pass. I'm not even going to protest it. Don't push these tools, or they'll respond with timeouts. And asking too many times will usually get you banned if you keep asking it to do something it doesn't want to do. Just follow it. And in fact, talk to it. Talk to ChatGPT or Dall-E and just say, help find me a way to get this picture close to what I want without violating your rules. And it will help you and give you suggestions now. The latest versions, the latest releases, the 4.5 model that was just released last week. It could also produce a lot of stupid things like this. I mean, railroads have double stacked container trains. They don't have quadruple stacked container trains. And they don't have containers stacked on top of locomotives. And they don't have a third rail running down the middle of the track. In most cases. In a couple of cases, they do. So there's a lot of stupidity in some of the images that are generated. But there's much more subtle ones out there that you really need to look at if you're using any of this content professionally. You need to look for things like 6 fingers on people, 3 legs, missing limbs. With video generation, people disappearing, magic hair that changes color as people turn from left to right. My hair, I would suddenly grow hair or something. Right, sort of like the train that we showed. Things that defy the laws of physics. Another suggestion, by the way, if you have cats, is don't leave Chewy logged in, or else you'll have like $400 in cat toys show up from FedEx the next day. Obviously, that was produced with Dall-E. The cost for these different services. Generally, if you're not interested in making if you're not doing a lot of high turnaround work, which is usually professional work, you can get away with using most of these services for free because they have free levels of service. In fact, the free level of service on Sora, the video generator that's produced by OpenAI, now allows unlimited video creation at the free level. They did that on Monday of this past week, and I haven't been able to get anything done since then. And we're on sort of the intermediate paid plan. So they've got some work to do to beef up their hardware in the background. We mostly use ChatGPT's paid plan, which includes Dall-E and Sora. And additionally, we use Adobe Creative Cloud. And the total cost to us every month is about $100. But as I said, you have to shop around to find a plan and a service that fits your needs.
Now, is that part of the basic Adobe Creative Cloud plan? Or
Yes.
Buy an add-on.
Yes, you can actually, it actually is part of the photographic one, which is like $12 a month.
My Creative Cloud is like $60.
Yeah, that's what ours is too. And it's part of that. And I'll explain, it's very good to have the Adobe generative AI capability in addition to the others. I'll explain that why a bit later. Unfortunately, these services are getting overloaded. So I tell everyone, buy NVIDIA stock, please. So let's get creative. Let's look at the Gen AI using that based on language models and some basic and advanced things that you can do. Things that hopefully, I think the reason I put this talk together was to show you that you can do things that you in some of these technologies that you've wanted to do for years but haven't been able to because you just don't have like a personal assistant to help you do it. And that's what I love about it. And then we'll get into the visual models, creating images, videos, give you some hints on writing prompts without driving yourself nuts. And believe me, I've just about lost most of my hair over the past 6 months from using these tools because they can be annoying. And I have a treat, 2 full-blown video productions that we've created, which I hope you'll enjoy. So the best way to find out what ChatGPT, for example, can do is to ask ChatGPT itself. So I did. And the obvious ones are information and learning, ask it questions. It has an incredible amount of depth in terms of what it knows about. It can help with creative writing. I'll show you how you can do that. Languages can help with. In fact, it can do the job for you, basically. Coding help isn't really something I've been doing. My son is a programmer for a financial services company in New York City. He said they use ChatGPT constantly to do little bits of coding work that otherwise would be just tedious thing to do. I'll show you an example of that. Image generation, entertainment and trivia. It's great for entertainment and trivia. In fact, it has quite a good sense of humor. Current events and research. I'm not sure if the unpaid plans for ChatGPT have current events, if it can get out and see the current internet. The paid plans do, and I'll give you an amazing example of that in a second. So here's a simple thing. Write a letter in German asking an eBay vendor if they ship to the US. ChatGPT immediately came back with a wonderful letter. And of course, I went back and translated this using Google because I can read a little bit of German, not all of it. It was a perfect, pitch perfect letter. And I used this and it worked perfectly. So that's an example of doing a slightly more complex task than just writing a letter asking someone if they could do something in English. Here's kind of an interesting story. There's a music video I've always wanted to find again. And it's a music video with a band driving a VW van in the desert, finding a goldfish in a bag of water. Now, there's only one video out there that's like that. And I've never been able to find it. And believe me, I have looked and looked and looked. ChatGPT came back. This is a year ago because this presentation was originally going to be given a year ago. It's been completely rewritten to cover video. But I had a car accident coming down here a year ago. I actually drove over a tree had fallen on my driveway. I drove over part of it, and it ripped my exhaust system off. At any rate, and it came back and said, Interstate Love Song by Stone Temple Pilots. That's not it. And it even couches as saying, I'm not really sure if that's it. So I asked this again the other day. I wish I printed it out. And it said, Stone Temple Pilots, Interstate Love Song. But it said, I don't think that's it, what you're looking for. However, I do know that there's a group on Reddit that helps find old videos that people are looking for. Do you want me to make a posting on Reddit for you? And I'll get back to you if there's any positive results. This is the program for calculating the date of Easter. Something I think that everyone in a computer science course has played around with or used, probably done as an assignment one time. This would have been so great to have when I was a kid. Now, this is me being abducted by aliens on the way down here this morning, or rather a year ago, was kind of the big joke. There's my Subaru, there's the aliens, and the beam of blue light dragging me up into the spaceship. So I asked ChatGPT to write a story, a 2-paragraph story about how Lewis got abducted by aliens on the way to TCF. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but aside from the bubbling over with excitement, you got it pretty much right. It's kind of interesting. There's no question that you could have ChatGPT write a book for you. I don't think that's a particularly great way to use it. I think it's a little bit dishonest to use it that way. But it can do other things. It can be your AI co-author. I am blessed to have a number of friends who are in the film business, both in New Jersey and in California. And they've encouraged me for a long time to write a screenplay or put together an outline, at least, for a story about my mother's family. And the name of the name of this has been titled "The Belle of Aracar." Aracar is a section of Staten Island where they grew up. My grandfather was an early flyer. His brother was a World War I flying ace. His brother, their other brother, was a engineer who built steamship boiler systems, who missed the Lusitania's, missed being on the Lusitania by like 10 minutes. Their father was a crazy inventor who's waiting for his inheritance to come from Scotland. And their mother was sort of someone who sort of held the whole family together. And their sister was my great aunt, I guess my great aunt, Isabel, who was known as the Belle of Aracar. I guess she had a lot of suitors following her around all the time. And the brothers were always trying to fend off the suitors. There was a lot of interesting stuff in this family. It's kind of an interesting family. And it's certainly enough to make a movie or a series out of it. But I never had the time or interest to sit down and start working and building something. So I turned to ChatGPT to help me, basically describe the entire family story as much as I could. And it outlined in incredible detail and with incredible insight a storyline to go along with it.
Are we looking at the prompt you gave it, or is that?
This is the output. The prompt was much more complicated. This is some of the output. There was one instance. The other thing it can do is it can fill in the blanks, sort of like the what I always think of with this is Jurassic Park, when they had part of the DNA for dinosaurs, but they filled in the rest of the DNA for dinosaurs with frog DNA. What ChatGPT can do, it can take the DNA that you give it and then fill it in with stuff that it's found by scarfing off the rest of the world and adding it to its cloud-based memory banks, and then use that in your story. And what it did was it took a story about my grandfather, who at one time when he was barnstorming in the Midwest, actually in like the Kansas, Texas area, encountered agents of Pancho Villa who tried to bribe him into running guns into Mexico, which he refused to do, and pretty much left town by the skin of his teeth, almost having people coming after him, shooting at him as he's taking off to get away from them. But it turned that into a rich story. I'm not sure I agree with all of it, but you can go back and say, take out this part, take out that part. The point here is that there's a lot of work that goes into creating a story, putting it on paper. And what ChatGPT can do is take your story and do the hard work and do a little bit extra research and a little bit of adding some frills and fluff to the story that you might not have thought of, and make the whole job easier and a little bit more professional looking at the end of it. Here's a fun one. The restaurant concept. I decided I wanted to open a Bulgarian Mexican fusion restaurant in Chelsea, in New York City. Could there be a stupider idea out there? First, I asked for some potential names. Cactus Kebab, I think, was one of the best ones, but I ended up choosing Balkan Fiesta. And the point behind this is that if you're building a multimedia, story, or a video, or a book, it's nice to be able to envision both the pictures, the menu, the reviews, everything else related to this restaurant, as opposed to just, I'd like to have a Mexican fusion restaurant. So I asked it for a menu, and it came up with this bizarre menu of Mexican Bulgarian fusion dinners, starters, and main courses. So we went a little bit further, and we asked it for a picture of, and it looks like a typical crazy restaurant in Chelsea. Been to many of them. Looks like the Chelsea neighborhood.
Fusion and cuisine.
You bring up a very interesting point. The image-based models generally do not understand words. They just understand them as they're things that look like a B. They don't understand that a B and an A need to go with each other. So they spell things quite frequently. But you could go in there with Photoshop and fix that if you really wanted to. Obviously, I wasn't using this anyplace except this presentation, so I didn't need to fix it. And some happy Bulgarians dining. The only person I know in the world who would actually go to this restaurant is my son, my other son, who's a foodie, lives in New York too. He said this looks just spot on for Bulgarian restaurants he's been in. He's actually been in Bulgarian restaurants. It's incredible.
I should have named an album too.
Yeah.
I just did a Google search for it.
But unfortunately, it's a fiesta that fizzled out. I asked it to do a negative New York Times restaurant review, and it would have been happy to give you a positive one too. I love the line again. Balkan Fiesta stands as a reminder that some unions are better left unexplored. AI has been incorporated into Photoshop, as we mentioned, and can be used to edit and enhance images. This is a really nice sunrise that I took a shot of, but I decided to make it a little bit cooler by adding a star field up at the top of it, which you can barely see, I guess, in this. But then I didn't like the framing. I wanted it to be a wider aspect ratio, so I was able to extend the trees further out. And what it does is it looks at the trees and then replicates trees that look like those trees and pushes them out to the borders of the larger aspect ratio. Now I added a time-lapse star field on top of it, which I thought was kind of interesting. I'm not sure it's to everyone's taste. I happen to think it came out pretty well. This is not what you think. This is not just going in and asking for a field full of coneflowers. Those are actually photographed. There's 2 coneflower photographs I took, which I asked to have replicated 80,000 times across a field. And I added the bird and the sun in using AI. So that's technically my photograph there, that coneflower. So I can say I sort of created this. This is actually amazing. I wasn't going to add this picture, but I threw it in just because it's so cool. This is an example of AI enhancement and noise reduction in Photoshop. You remember back in October, we had the aurora in New Jersey. My wife just loves auroras. In fact, she's trying to drag me to Iceland in September, of this upcoming September. It should be an interesting trip. We went down to the largest open area in Bethlehem Township that we could find, which is Heritage Park. And I set up a camera. It was a Canon 5DS, not a 5DSR, it was a Canon R5 Mark II. I couldn't see anything through the viewfinder. It was just black. And in the direction where the aurora was supposed to be happening, you could see absolutely nothing. But I took about 100 pictures just to be on the safe side, bracketed it a little bit, brought it home, and then brought it up in Lightroom, which is the sister program of Photoshop. And what I did was I turned up noise reduction as far as it would go, brightened everything up. And not only did I have the aurora, but I had the Big Dipper clearly visible there. And this was not added by AI. This was actually snapped with the camera. And up here in the upper right-hand side, you can see one of Elon Musk's Starlink satellite trains cruising across the sky there, polluting the night sky with additional light that's not needed. I couldn't believe this. And my wife couldn't believe it either. Image creation is what I think a lot of people have been doing and playing around with some of these AI tools. I asked for a picture to celebrate Pi Day a couple of days ago when it was officially Pi Day. And it created this. By the way, any questions about the text generation stuff? Or this is all in the paid version, but it would do this in the non-paid version too, I think. And the paid version, by the way, is really only about $20 a month. It's not that bad. And there are other free programs out there. I suggest you I would try several different services until you settle down and pay for one. I'll tell you, right now, I'm not sure I would even use OpenAI because it's so slow since they've changed their pricing tiers. They've got to fix those problems because it's unusable this past week. Very disappointing. It can make cartoons. And there's a real reason for making this. My sister has one of these terriers. It's a West Island Terrier. And she was going to buy a townhouse in Florida that's on a lagoon. I sent her this picture and said, I don't think you want to do that. Because it's true, these alligators, which inhabit these lagoons, can outrun a dog, especially her dog. It's not that fast. And she did not go ahead and I'm sure the picture stopped her from doing it, but in fact, I'm not even sure she even saw it because she doesn't know how to use mail. Believe it or not. I asked it for a collage for our 20th anniversary, Round Mountain Group's 20th anniversary last year. What I did was I gave it basically a list of all the customers that we had and what business they were in, and asked it to produce a collage showing all of them, if possible. And there's a few that I'm not sure what they are, and there's a few that are missing. But all in all, it got most of them pretty much right. There's the police guards there because we do a company that supplies bad police badges to most of the police departments in New Jersey. We do a lot of work with a company that does travel planning. We do a lot of work with the kombucha bar in Flemington, the Beneducci Vineyard, and the Wine Growers Co-op. We work with a company that makes ATM machines.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How complicated was your prompt? It's Dall-E.
I just said, I need a collage, square collage, give it the dimensions I wanted.
You gave me the exact pixel sizes.
I gave it, no, you can only pick, in Dall-E, you can only pick 1 by 1, 16 by 9, 16 by 9 vertical. Give it the aspect ratio. generally their pictures are 1024 bit resolution to the long side. Said I wanted a 20, and then just gave it a list of businesses. Not so much. I didn't give it the business names. I gave it the business that they were in. For example, a kombucha brewing restaurant, a winery co-op, things like that. One of our pro bono customers is a animal rescue. Fairy tales endings and, oh, I'm sorry. This is my solution to finding a new place to build Penn Station. Nobody's taking me up on it, though. A lot of people complain that I have a website, louisjadis.com, that's been my photography website for a long time. They complain that I was putting some of the AI stuff in it. Exactly. We registered theghostinthemachine.net, and that's the place we're going to start putting the AI, all our AI work into. I always thought it's funny when you watch the Super Bowl, especially toward the end. I'm not a huge sports fan, but I did notice that there's an increasingly strange group of people and crowded group of people on the sidelines. So I asked it to produce it. But the funniest thing of all is that it produces these aliens with Indian costumes on. I don't know why. It's an example of how, if you're not, and we have other Indians there. And I don't think those are supposed to be spacemen. I think they're supposed to be deep sea divers, by the way. This is kind of funny. For one of the town websites we did a cover photo for winter. And on their Facebook page, there's this huge argument brew up over where the photo was taken. And of course, it's not a photo at all. It was created in Dall-E. I guess I was being insincere about that. I should slap myself on the arm. When you build websites commercially, most of the pictures you're taking are not dramatic. They're like pictures of a book with a calculator sitting on it. I can't explain how many times you need to create pictures like this. And it's nice to do different ones every single time. And it's so nice to be able to just call them up and have them generated for you. Right, because it doesn't understand letters and words. In fact, yeah. That would be a fun one to use.
Any way you can fix it?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, you can fix it in post in Photoshop.
Yeah, actually, not a question now.
Sure.
This is the same, like this, I don't know what it's for, but the one, especially with the toxic waste cleanup. Is there any worry that that's gonna make the company look like they don't know what they're doing, like they're a fraud? Like if I were looking for toxic waste cleanup and I saw something that looked like I would think these guys are joking.
We didn't use that picture. I just created that for the show. I just created that for today. The pictures that we created look like the boring pictures that you would be taken by somebody, an engineer at the site with a cell phone. Very careful about stuff like that. But that's a very good question. Yes.
For example, of this photos.
Oh, yeah, I bet you're right.
It doesn't understand the layout. So you see keys that don't make sense.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah.
By the way, we did use this, but it's presented in such a small size that I don't think you could even read it. This was another screenplay idea I was pitching to my friends. Mel Gibson in The Last Railway Man, but unfortunately it's gone absolutely nowhere, and I suspect it never will. But the cool thing about it is that I asked for this and then described it in the context of a movie poster, which it went off and researched other movie posters and came back and created this. It looks exactly like a movie poster with just gibberish for all the words. And there's tons and tons of gibberish on it. But I think it's kind of cool. And it did allow me to, I guess Mel Gibson's not that big a star anymore because it used Mel Gibson's real face. This is a nice looking picture, but kind of stupid because in addition to the broad gauge track on the right, it also produces sort of a narrow gauge, sort of like garden railway.
It's actually like one track and.
It's not that good. You'd have to go back and re-prompt it. And by the way, I'm going to explain about re-prompting and intermediate re-prompting. 90% of the stuff that people do, and you can see this stuff because they post it. OpenAI has galleries where they post, the stuff that's being done in Sora, which is the video generator, and in Dall-E, which is the picture generator. 90% of the stuff is either cats or science fiction. So I had to play with a little bit of science fiction there. I'm not sure what these creatures are. They look like the monsters in Don't Look Up at the end. This, though, is something that we've actually been playing around with a little bit, which was, and this is for the website Ghost in the Machine. It's kind of a story about going off into netherlands of the universe and finding these old abandoned radio transmitters, navigation systems from some other society that are left there, and trying to research and understand what they are. It's the story is called Beacons. We haven't done a lot with it, but this is one of the sort of concept ideas that we had. This is interesting. Al, before he passed away, had commissioned us to do artwork for the David Sarnoff Museum, which has been moved over here, obviously, to TCNJ. This is one of the posters that we created for Al. So the problem with prompts, is that if you prompt for something and then ask it to make intermediate changes, usually what it does is it changes something else. There's a couple ways around this. One is don't make mistakes. Always get it right the first time, because almost every single time you ask for something, the first one is the best. As soon as you start asking to change things start veering off into disaster land. You need to be as precise as possible. As I said, don't use incremental prompts. But you can use Photoshop AI for minor revisions. For example, if you create, and I have an example of this. Let me wait till we come to that slide. Most of these models don't understand the negative. They only understand the positive. So you can't say don't do something or know something. If you want to emphasize, you can use the word important or do this exactly. Exactly. And very importantly, something I discovered a couple of months ago is that on Reddit, there are prompt guides for just about everything and every model. So for example, for Sora, there's a prompt guide on clothing. Very, very helpful, as you'll see in a second. So for example, I created the person on the left first, and she has blue eyes. I asked for an intermediate, I did an intermediate prompt saying to change that to brown eyes, and it gave her brown eyes, but it changed her hairstyle, it changed her shirt, and I think it changed her completely into a different person. It's just not right. What you can do, if you want to fix something like this, is take the original one, pull it up in Photoshop, put a rectangle around the eyes, and then ask Photoshop to regenerate it with brown eyes. And it will do a perfectly matching job every single time. This is another example of why you need to use these prompt guides. I've always heard the boots like this referred to as knee-high. However, Sora, Dall-E, they will never understand knee-high. They think knee-high is like thigh-high. You have to describe them as calf-high, which I guess makes sense, but it's the only way you can get it to work. Prompts with people. A good trick is to give people names. Once you have somebody to the point where you like them, say, this is now Mary Beth, or this is now Bill. and then reference Bill and Mary Beth in the upcoming slides that you're trying to use them in different positions. And it will usually remember who they were. And after 10 or 15 tries or 10 or 15 prompts after that, it seems to start wearing off. They start morphing into a different person. But at least you have 5 to 10 opportunities to use the same person, which is usually enough. You can also name things. So you can name something a house, the house. One of the long form videos we did this with the castle that's used. We gave it a name, and then we asked it to reuse it every single time, and it did the right thing every single time. Remember that you control the camera. You control the camera in these tools. So you need to learn, if you're going to use this stuff seriously, you need to learn, camera terms like one shot for one person, two shot, two people in a shot, one take, especially for video. One take means if you have a 10-second video, the camera hasn't changed position. The camera may have moved following the subject, but you don't have a different camera from a different angle cutting in, or stop action where the thing stops after 5 seconds and it moves to the other side. One take means one take. Or you can say like 2 takes. And the number one rule with using this stuff is be patient, because sometimes it can take a while to get stuff the way you want it. Now we come to video. And I've got to say, this is where stuff gets amazing. You don't need really high resolution video for republishing stuff on the web. So I usually pick 480p videos, and I upscale them to 720p in editors like Premiere or whatever editor I'm using. Sora allows 5, 10, or 20-second videos. 20-second, you need to be on their $200 a month plan, which I think is what they're trying to force people to do. We're using this for any sort of business purpose. And you can pick between 480p, 720p, and 1080p. 1080p is only in the $200 a month plan. 480p and 720p now, as of last week, are both available in both the free plan and the $20 a month plan with ChatGPT. I want to sound like a salesman for ChatGPT and OpenAI, but I personally have found that for my purposes, they are the best that I've seen. And I played with all of them. You may find something totally different because you have different expectations. To get things right, you need to fully understand and specify things like camera direction and lighting, because you are now the cameraman and the director of your movie. Oh, it's okay. You need to be careful about copyrights. If you add music on a video, you need to get either copyright clearance, which you can get very easily when you post to YouTube. You can let it do an upload and then see if it finds a copyright violation. Then it goes back to the owner, who says, I'll let you use this as long as you let me put ads on it. If you agree to make an agreement like that, you can usually post anything you want within the constraints of who will allow you to do it. I've never run into a problem. But for something else, if you're not specifically using a specific song or a specific sound effect, you can use Google's free audio library, which is a huge resource. They have about 800 music pieces that you can choose from across all sorts of genres. And generally, you can find something that's going to be useful or close to useful. And then there are various paid services out there. I won't go through them, that you can subscribe to get sound effects and songs and music that might be a little bit better than the Google ones.
You'd be surprised what's in the public domain.
Oh, yeah.
I was using as an intro on video just for personal use, 20th Century Fox fanfare. And I could go public with someone that thought I needed to get new music. I found, nope, that's public domain.
It's always worthwhile to try, see if you can get away with stuff. I know this is what I do. Videos can be edited together in a linear editor like Premiere or iMovie or Final Cut. I tend to use Premiere. I use iMovie from time to time too. It can take a lot of effort to produce professional results. Not surprisingly, when video came along last month, or 2 months ago, well, actually in January, time is slipping by. Cats are still the most commonly created thing in video on with Gen AI. So I made a video of cats disco dancing. The funniest ones are the ones that have no heads. I don't know if you notice. Two tails, one on each side. It's an example of you really need to be careful before using this stuff. This is for the previous session here. Cats flying drones, which I really think was the story behind the New Jersey drone story. And whatever you do, don't ever leave a button on a table and tell a cat, don't press it. I like the way he just sort of turns around like, it's not important to me. I don't care if I just blew up.
As long as tell Sora to track.
Huh?
Did you tell Sora to track left to right?
The whole thing was stage set, yeah. But you can do fancier things than that. Like,
You show the prompt.
I don't have them here.
Question, if example, if you gave it multiple shots of a real fashion, would it stitching together?
Haven't tried it. Supposedly you can upload. We're doing okay?
No.
I have 2 sessions side by side.
Oh, then we're doing great.
Great.
So you're good. You don't need any help then. at
No,
this
we're
point,
great.
Seriously, because you're all set from
Your team
before.
did a fantastic
Okay,
job.
perfect. All right.
You can create, very dreamlike sequences like this. And once again, a lot of direction went into describing how this needed to be filmed.
Are you giving those opacity percentages to those other dancers back?
Yeah, but good example of the fact that it doesn't always work. I also want the clocks to be spinning, and I could never get the clocks to spin.
So you layered that in Premiere. That was multiple.
No, that was all layered in Sora.
Okay.
It was described as shadowy figures, ghostly figures, and a real figure. Yes.
My test image size as possible.
You have to be as precise as possible. Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yes, on test generation, the first version has been but you can find your prompts.
Yes, in Sora, the video generator, there's something called remixing. Remixing will leave most things the same. In fact, if you put nothing in remix and set it to a mild remix, it'll be the original image will just be regenerated. You can make stronger remixes and give suggestions or changes, and it will try to incorporate these into the remix that it creates. So yes, it is possible, but the only tool that I know that uses that right now in the OpenAI world is Sora. This is something we did for one of our websites. Got the lights and things perfectly. It's just amazing. This is for a fan video that we're working on. Now for long form videos, which is what I really like playing around with. I have 2 to show you. One is called Ageless Messengers, and it's a song sung by Moira Brennan, who is, I always have to explain this, is Enya's sister. And actually has a very similar singing style to Enya. Sings very similar kinds of songs. It's a very cinematic sounding song. This is about two months old, and it's a beautiful song. Never had its own music video, and I had an idea for it for years and years. The song has been out for about 20 years. I've had many ideas for this, but was never able to bring it to life using the tools that were out there before, like DAZ and Poser. Anybody familiar with them? 3D modeling tools to focus on people. At any rate, AI has made this, the ability for me as a single creator to create something like this possible. It was just not, it was impossible to do this. It's too complicated without AI. I will say that the lip syncing needs to be redone. There's a new Sora model that came out just in the past week or so that supposedly has improved lip syncing. So we're going to give it a try. We might remaster this video with the new lip syncing. Bosnia 2028 is the second one. It's more of an advocacy film, and it's had about 50,000 YouTube views in the past 3 weeks. This was a really complicated project. We generated about 1,000 clips in order to make it. It's ridiculously complicated to stage manage because there's a lot of people in it. They all look like humans. There was a lot of complication in the way it was lit and edited because we wanted it to look like it's all shot with documentary footage. It's entirely made with Sora and with Premiere, the editor. A Hollywood insider, friend of mine who's looked at this, said they didn't think this was even possible to do. And I will point out that in all cases, we have copyright clearances for the music on YouTube. So without further ado, this is Ageless Messengers. I hope the sound works. Any questions about that? Yes.
The people, figures riding horses, they didn't look like they were real people. They looked like computer generated objects.
Yeah, some people we've seen have commented on that. Well, it's based on the model. So
Uh-huh.
as I said, this is about 2 months old. The technology moves so fast that probably would be better if we did it today. That's what we did. Yes.
Thing that brilliant as that is, that mission will put that 6 up.
Yeah, I said the lip syncing really needs to be redone here. When we did this 2 or 3 months ago, the lip syncing model, as we understood it, as we understand it today, the lip syncing model there was much worse than the one that's there today. We just tried this with another video recently, and it seemed to be better. But we haven't done it with a song yet. We've just done it with people talking. We might redo this.
Did you pull the acapella out? Did you do an acapella track and feed it to the AI or
No.
just the song?
No, we took the words out of the song and tried to time it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Seemed like it was pretty, I wouldn't say labor intensive, but it definitely required a lot of patience. Especially if you're trying to get those shots. There were a lot of like speed frames you were doing, like changing the speed of the shots.
I'll tell you, patience is one thing you need when you're working with this stuff. The next one took over 1,000. We did 1,000 prompts to do this. All done by Sora.
So it's like how many seconds per second?
I think the total song is like 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and most of the clips are 5 to 10 seconds. But we, edited them, and we moved them. Some of them, none are at true 5-second or 10-second boundaries because of the editing. Because we tried to syncopate it to music. It was a lot of work. This was a lot more work, actually. Any other questions about ageless messengers? So that was our first effort. This is the second effort we did. This was more complicated.
I have one journey boat in love that's too big to ignore. And I know too much to go back and tell. Cause I've heard it all before, but I've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna keep it down again. Oh, yes, but it's the ball. Cause it only serves to to achieve. And I know that what's wrong. Not along staying on, but you even in my soul. Yes. Here's the sensible and I want what you see. on our way to
Any questions about that?
You asked it for handheld for the shake.
Yeah. We also, deliberately did bad lighting in some places because it looked like you'd be in a close confines where lighting would be very bright on people's faces. And the people actually, and this was not something we added, this is something that the program did, it had that person turning away from the bright light. It's amazing. Yes.
Two soldiers were standing up, the guy was down like that, it looked like they were giants. That's supposed to be, he looks so much bigger than it.
It's a good question. I'd have to go back and look at that carefully. And we tried to, have average heights of people, describe people relatively averagely about, throughout the whole thing. Need to look at that.
I was wondering if that's a statement that they
That was definitely not a statement that we were trying to make. Yes.
Why were you banned on Twitter?
Oh, it had nothing to do with that. It was,
Says inauthenticity.
right, inauthenticity. They basically claimed that I post a lot of AI stuff. And they were basically saying that I didn't label the AI stuff as AI. So I was being inauthentic. They've done this with a lot of people. They kind of target, to be honest with you, they kind of target people who have a certain viewpoint on things, as it seems. But I don't want to get into that because, this isn't for politics. Any other questions?
So you did say that you kind of landed on Sora. What about, Stable Diffusion or Agent or other things?
I'll tell you, if Sora doesn't get better fast, I'll be looking at them. For me, I've gotten what I wanted from Sora, and the price is right. Yes.
In text gen AI, you have options like temperature and top K and top P. Are there any equivalents you have on the image generation and video generations?
I've never played with that. No.
Oh, you do what they do.
You mean for color temperature?
No. Temperature in terms of text generation would say that if you have a higher temperature, you have greater variability. You put the temperature
Oh, okay.
down,
Yeah, prompt
it's
strength.
when you straighten, narrow, you run the thing multiple times, it's the same thing.
Yeah, ChatGPT, Dall-E, as far as I know, doesn't have that option for you. I've seen a number that sometimes they call that prompt strength.
Like Cafe, which is Stable Diffusion, I think is prompt strength.
Yeah. Any other questions? Don't look for me on Twitter.
Were you hired to do that Bosnia video, or was that just?
No, we made it as a pro bono for people.
Cool.
That's a lot of work for
I'm semi-retired, so I have time. And by the way, these services are better late at night. So most of this was done at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, to do 1,000 generations takes a lot of time sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, like, you know, they talk about video AI replacing crews and going places and shooting. Like, okay, you got just one guy, you at 3 o'clock in the morning, refining your prompts all the day. Well, I could have had, 10 guys making sure I get the shot right once. So,
But as I said, somebody in the business said that they couldn't believe that video when it saw it.
Any video sort of?
My suggestion is, go out to Sora, set up an account. If you have a ChatGPT account. Oh, probably because of the fact that they're completely overloaded. I couldn't get anything. I was trying to do some additional videos here to, just to throw in here for, just for illustration purposes.
It'd be nice to see the process.
We wouldn't be able to do it today anyway, because I think it's still very, very slow. Apologize for that. Anybody else?
Honestly, one thing I've seen in a couple of different AI created, mostly, I don't know. At this point, I've seen some of the same faces over. They have a couple go-to faces. Some of these, I might not know the name, but I say, okay, it's that generator. Like, that girl's face, I've seen like in a couple of different. I've seen her this old, I've seen her.
There's no question. I totally agree with you.
Okay, and I had a couple of, especially because they're all very. A couple of things were illustrated out of 100. Okay, is that something you can? Is that something you have? Like you said, you could like give names. Is that something? What examples?
You could do it. You could do it. The problem is we're dealing with so many people, and they weren't all the same people in the same scenes, that it was just getting out of hand complicated. So we just stopped trying to do that.
But I was especially noticeable when you look at how undiverse the women actually were in there.
I totally hear you on that, and this is something that we've been hammered over the head a couple of times by people about, and I totally buy into it. That you're right. We should have been more careful about that.
and it's something like, won't the alternative be you design the person, give them the name, then tell them that, Tom, Dick, and Harry are all in this scene.
You could do it that way, or you could ask for more diverse people potentially. Sometimes when you ask for more diverse people, you don't get what you really want also. So it seemed as though the right thing to do to get this done was to have a less diverse pool of people in it. I also blame the model to some degree too, because the model was the thing that was actually picking the people, because we didn't actually specify them beyond female.
Interesting that both the police and the military were so lifelike. I wonder what they were drawing from as video for learning. Like if they had a pool of military.
There's
video.
so much video and stuff out there that it's easy for them to draw from that pool, yeah. And it's probably a lot of it is open source, so they're able to get it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point.